This whole place is going underwater.
But this is no sneak attack. The aggressor announces her intentions. Experts predict the date, the time, even the place where she will strike. And yet somehow, a natural disaster spirals into an unnatural human catastrophe.
We're devastated.
We haven't eaten in 3 days.
What turns Katrina into one of the deadliest hurricanes of modern times?
No water, no food.
We don't have a home.
We lost everything.
Why does it take so long to respond to the cries for help? Who makes the decisions and why?
People got to do something. You ain't got no more food.
We got babies out here. We got handicapped people.
On the floor, she's dying right now. 2 people died already.
Where's people? Where's the mail?
Please, somebody.
We need some help out here.
Get out of here. We want to get out of here.
I don't even know if my kids are alive, man.
The facts behind the storm shed new light as we go inside Hurricane Katrina. Baton Rouge, Louisiana, July 2004. A war game is underway at the state's Emergency Operations Center. The scenario, a deadly hurricane called Pam ravages New Orleans and the surrounding area. Floodwaters surge over the levees engulfing the city. The death toll, 61,000. The injured and sick, 380,000. The homeless, 500,000. 500,000 buildings destroyed. 1 million people evacuate the hurricane zone. In the war game, Pam cripples local and state government. So without even waiting for an SOS, Washington takes charge of the relief effort. After a week of these doomsday scenarios, the disaster officials have a preliminary plan.
So the locals knew what their responsibilities were. The state knew what its responsibilities were. The federal government knew what its responsibilities were.
Wednesday, August 24th, 2005, 11 a.m., the Central Bahamas. Heavy rain and high winds rattle the skies and kick up mountainous waves in the Atlantic Ocean. Satellite photography reveals a spinning formation of thunderstorms, with the signature counterclockwise rotation of a hurricane in the making. Sustained wind speed tops 38 miles an hour. It is officially a tropical storm, for now. On the alphabetized list of names for storms in the Atlantic Ocean in 2005, the next one up is Katrina. Miami. The National Hurricane Center issues an advisory. Hurricane conditions are possible in South Florida within 36 hours. Bentonville, Arkansas. An emergency response team here is already on the case.
Hurricanes are one of the few disasters that give you lead time, that you can really kind of plan things ahead of time. And for us, it's go, 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 go until the storm hits.
This response team is using that lead time to gather truckloads of supplies that people need in an emergency, including bottled water, flashlights, and Pop-Tarts. But Jason Jackson is not part of a government disaster plan. He works for Walmart. Thursday, August 25th, 3:30 p.m. Katrina's wind speed hits 74 miles an hour. That means she's now a Category 1 hurricane, able to topple trees, down power lines, and damage homes. At the high end of the scale, a Cat 5, with winds above 155 miles an hour, can decimate entire communities killing anyone in its path. At 6:30 p.m., Hurricane Katrina comes ashore. She pummels the coast of Florida and heads inland. She leaves 14 people dead and causes $460 million in damages. For a Cat 1, she packs a serious punch. The reason? Katrina's swirling winds are high, but she moves over the state slowly at only 8 miles per hour.
An average hurricane usually moves at about 15 to 20 miles per hour with its forward speed. So it basically hung over Florida for an extended period of time, exposing them to relatively weak but hurricane-force winds nevertheless.
Katrina's foray into South Florida has cost her energy. Hurricanes typically lose strength over land. That's because they draw their power from warm water, like an engine burning fuel. Once she's out over the warm Gulf of Mexico, Katrina re-energizes.
The conditions were very right because the sea surface temperatures were over 80 degrees, which is the minimum you need for the formation of hurricanes.
Friday, August 26, 11:30 a.m. Katrina strengthens. She's now a Category 2 hurricane and could become a 3 within the next 24 hours. Her next target, anywhere from the Florida Panhandle to Louisiana. Along the Gulf Coast, the Red Cross and Salvation Army are on the move. They open shelters and mobile feeding units.
So before the storm hits, we're moving people, and we're also moving our supplies. We pre-position our supplies in warehouses around the Gulf Coast.
The news about Katrina is spreading, but who's paying attention?
Have you ever been to New Orleans? It's the hottest city.
New Orleans, Louisiana. A uniquely American city. A rollicking mix of French, Spanish, Creole, Cajun, and African influences. A place with its own beat. A city of 500,000 people spiced with jazz, voodoo, and gumbo.
Drop me off in New Orleans, man.
The good times roll on the very fragile soil of the Mississippi Delta. This major port city is built almost entirely below sea level. It's shaped like a crescent and surrounded by water. The Gulf of Mexico 100 miles to the south, Lake Pontchartrain to the north, and the Mississippi River winds through it. On average, the city streets are 6 feet lower than the Gulf. It's protected by one of the world's largest systems of earthen levees and flood walls. But some of the levees are slowly sinking and in need of repair. On Friday at 5 p.m., Katrina is northwest of the Florida Keys. With every passing hour, she sucks in energy from the warm water. She's projected to grow into a very dangerous Category 3 hurricane with winds up to 130 miles per hour. Katrina now appears to have settled on a target west of the Florida Panhandle. She is fast becoming a monster. From Washington, D.C. to Louisiana, local, state, and federal officials know Katrina is coming.
We're dealing with Hurricane Katrina.
Baton Rouge. Here at the Louisiana Emergency Operations Center, officials are in battle mode. Several times a day, they strategize on the phone with emergency planners around the state, the ones who'll be on the front lines if disaster strikes. One local official recorded these calls and provided them to the producers of this documentary. They reveal what officials say to each other and how they plan, up to the very moment that Katrina strikes.
Would like to point out or let you know, too, that the governor is monitoring the call. Will that go to state police? There are no road closures at this time. We've prepared all of our assets for deployment and placed all our personnel on standby.
For this hurricane, as with every natural disaster in the U.S., local and state officials are the primary and most critical line of defense.
Shelter Task Force, any reports at this time? No report. We're just in the alert phase. The Red Cross is opening a forward operations office tomorrow morning here in Baton Rouge to begin to stage resources from other states coming in that would be available for Louisiana and our neighboring states in case of the storm coming in.
Everything starts from the bottom up, and there's an old saying, all disasters are local.
Even before a hurricane hits or flood waters rise, the states will often ask the federal government to get involved. That's where FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, comes in. FEMA is supposed to strategize with the state and come up with a plan of attack.
The state kind of acts as the broker, coordinating what the local needs are and giving us a picture of what the gross needs are, so to speak.
Also on this Friday, August 26th, both Mississippi and Louisiana declare states of emergency, which give the governors the right to deploy National Guard troops and suspend civil liberties. The U.S. Coast Guard puts helicopters, planes, and cutters on standby. Out in the Gulf, oil companies evacuate their rigs. The work stoppage will have an immediate impact nationwide. The Gulf accounts for more than 25% of America's oil and natural gas production. New Orleans is by far the biggest city in the likely path of Katrina. She's now expected to hit the Gulf Coast in 72 hours. Over the coming days, 2 Louisiana politicians will play leading roles in determining the city's fate. 49-year-old Ray Nagin is a former cable TV executive elected as mayor in 2002. 62-year-old Kathleen Blanco is a veteran of state politics and the first woman to serve as Louisiana governor. It's Friday night in the French Quarter. On Bourbon Street, the étouffée flies out of the kitchens and the freewheeling jazz bands are moving feet. People down here, they don't fear hurricanes. They honor them. Big Easy style, with a mind-numbing concoction called a hurricane. 11 p.m. Friday night. The National Hurricane Center forecasts that Katrina will hit land here in the town of Burris, Louisiana, 60 miles southeast of New Orleans. This prediction will turn out to be extraordinarily accurate. Saturday, August 27th, 2005. Katrina is now a deadly Category 3 hurricane. Her winds hit 115 miles an hour. She draws awesome power from the Gulf and propels a storm surge ahead of her. 7:30 a.m., Baton Rouge. A Louisiana emergency official, Jeff Smith, has gathered his counterparts for another conference call.
FEMA Region 6, do you have any comments?
The FEMA liaison wants Louisiana officials to make a key decision about relief supplies.
We need to start flowing commodities to supplement what we already have, ice water. We need to talk about how many distribution points you want. So at your convenience this morning, if you give me a time, we'll give you a call to talk about that.
Evacuations are underway this morning in low-lying areas south and east of New Orleans. Under the state's emergency plan, those counties, or parishes as they call them in Louisiana, are the first to evacuate because they're the most vulnerable.
The policy is very simple. It's get out of here, and get out of here as quickly as we possibly can. So all the state agencies, the local agencies, everybody is working together to accomplish that goal.
It's a kind of gentleman's agreement. The goal is to let people in the surrounding communities get out of harm's way before traffic from New Orleans clogs up the interstates. For the city, the process begins at the point when forecasts say that tropical storm force winds will hit the coast in 30 hours. That point is approaching this afternoon. 1:30 p.m.
This is not a test. This is the real deal. And I don't want to panic you, but
In accordance with this plan, New Orleans Mayor Ray Nagin urges people in the lowest lying areas within the city to evacuate.
So we want you to be ready, we want you to be safe, and most importantly, like the governor said, we want you to be calm.
The mayor also announces that he will open the Superdome the following morning, Sunday, as a shelter of last resort. The Superdome is a 70,000-seat stadium and home to the New Orleans football team, the Saints. It was built to withstand 200-mile-an-hour winds. By late Saturday afternoon, both Louisiana and Mississippi triggered their emergency highway evacuation plans, using all lanes for outbound traffic. Even with the extra roadways, traffic snarls.
It's extremely hard to leave. Your whole life is here, your whole world, and it's hard to decide what's important and what's of value.
All along the Gulf Coast, thousands of people are streaming inland, hoping to avoid Katrina's wrath. Hotels book up. Lines form at grocery stores and gas stations.
Just recently gotten out of a gas line that was about 2 or 3 hours, and most of the gas stations are closed down.
But there are tens of thousands of people who are just staying put.
The people I talked to and asked them to get out, they were like, well, we don't have any place to go, so we're just hanging in here.
That attitude pervades parts of New Orleans as well, and this city of nearly 500,000 people is unprepared to deal with the consequences of so many people who decide to stay in their homes and ride out what threatens to be one of the most dangerous hurricanes in American history. Saturday afternoon, August 27th, 2005. A possibly catastrophic hurricane is now forecast to slam into the Gulf Coast on Monday morning. One statistic reveals the tragedy about to unfold. According to the New Orleans Emergency Management Plan, roughly 100,000 residents of New Orleans, more than 20% of the entire city, do not have cars or other means of personal transportation. Many of these same people have no money for a bus, a train, or a hotel. Many depend on welfare checks, which tend to run out by these last few days in the month. Despite the dollars that tourists bring to the Big Easy, New Orleans has long been poor. It has a poverty rate of more than 23%, almost twice the national average. And its murder rate is one of the highest per capita in the country. Many of the city's poorest residents live here in the sprawling 9th Ward. People live in ramshackle housing that sits as much as 4 feet below sea level. Crawford, Texas. President Bush is on vacation today at his ranch. He receives and signs a request from Governor Kathleen Blanco to declare a federal state of emergency in Louisiana. The White House can now direct any federal agency to use its resources to help the area. Saturday evening, FEMA has dispatched 5 search and rescue teams to Shreveport, Louisiana, and Meridian, Mississippi. FEMA positions the teams totaling 262 people out of the line of fire, but close enough to perform rescue operations after the storm hits. FEMA headquarters, Washington, D.C. An emergency specialist and union president named Leo Bosner is also tracking Katrina. Bosner believes the agency is unprepared for the kind of disaster predicted in the Hurricane Pam scenario.
And as this went along Saturday night and into Sunday, I think all of us just felt this terrible, hollow feeling. Why aren't greater measures being taken?
The director of FEMA is 50-year-old Michael Brown. He's been running it since 2003 and has handled disasters including California wildfires and the Columbia Space Shuttle explosion. FEMA is not the organization it once was. After 9/11, as the country focused on preventing another terrorist attack, Congress voted to downgrade FEMA from a cabinet-level agency. In 2003, it became part of the new Homeland Security Department.
The problem with putting FEMA into the Office of Homeland Security was that it took it out of the White House. And there is nothing more effective for any government agency than being right next to the president.
Saturday, August 27th, 7 p.m. Central Time. Katrina is a dangerous Category 3 hurricane. She's barreling toward Louisiana and Mississippi, on her way to becoming a cataclysmic 4 or 5. Weather maps show Katrina expanding so rapidly that she seems to overwhelm the entire Gulf. Her 12-foot waves are already approaching parts of the coast. By this point, across New Orleans, floodgates are closing on the levees that surround and cut through the city, including the Industrial Canal on the city's east side, the 17th Street Canal on the west side, and the London Avenue Canal in the Gentilly neighborhood. The levees are embankments made of dirt. Some are topped with reinforced concrete flood walls. They range between 13 and 18 feet tall. Some date all the way back to the 1920s. The Army Corps of Engineers maintains them and acknowledges that budget shortfalls have prevented urgently needed repairs. The levees are built to protect New Orleans from the storm surge of a Category 3 hurricane. Storm surge is when high winds push massive amounts of water above the normal sea level. As thousands of people stream out of New Orleans on Saturday night, jazz trumpeter Kermit Ruffins is headed back in. He's just finished a gig in San Diego.
I said, man, I need to get home real quick and board up my windows and get my family together and get out of here.
Ruffins is not quite ready to evacuate. He secures his house, then heads to the French Quarter to bar hop.
Bars are packed. Saw a lot of friends, and we're typical New Orleans humor. Hey man, this place will be underwater tomorrow.
President Bush declared a pre-hurricane state of emergency.
9:30 p.m. Louisiana Governor Blanco joins the conference call with emergency officials. She reports on her latest conversations with FEMA.
The FEMA officials tell me that that this is very unusual, that a president hasn't done this since 1992. So it's been years. I think that indicates the concerns at the highest levels of government in this nation.
And yet, despite the warnings and doomsday scenarios, a FEMA report will later note that on Saturday night, August 27th, 2005, the bars were rocking in the French Quarter. After midnight, as the Big Easy slowly winds down, Hurricane Katrina proves the forecasters correct. Sunday, August 28th, 12:40 a.m. Katrina becomes a Category 4 hurricane, hell-bent on destruction. Hurricane Pam is no longer just another doomsday theory. The worst-case scenario will soon be reality. Sunday, August 28, 2005, 7 a.m. Central Time. Hurricane Katrina is 250 miles out in the Gulf of Mexico. She has become an extremely rare Category 5 monster, forecast to come ashore in less than 24 hours. At this point, New Orleans Mayor Ray Nagin decides to announce a mandatory evacuation of the city, something that's never been done before. He puts the plan in motion. Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
We'll now go to our parish reports. Orleans.
On a conference call with state and FEMA officials, the New Orleans representative voices one overriding concern.
And we're dealing with our internal transportation plan of how to deal with our large number of people without vehicles to get to a refuge of last resort.
8 a.m. The refuge of last resort, the Superdome, begins taking in evacuees. Behind the scenes, FEMA Director Michael Brown expresses frustration that a mandatory evacuation has not yet been announced. Brown appeals to New Orleans residents.
Voluntary evacuations right now. I'll tell you this personally. If I lived in New Orleans, I'd be getting out of there.
Crawford, Texas, 9:25 a.m. From his ranch, President Bush calls Governor Kathleen Blanco to discuss the New Orleans evacuation plan. At this point, the governor and the mayor have the power and the responsibility for getting people out of harm's way. New Orleans, 9:30 a.m.
President Bush called and told me to share with all of you that he is very concerned about the citizens. He is concerned about the impact that this hurricane would have on our people, and he asked me to please ensure that there would be a mandatory evacuation of New Orleans.
Now there is one. Katrina's landfall is about 20 hours away.
This is going to be an unprecedented event. We want everybody to get out. The city of New Orleans has never seen a hurricane of this strength to hit it almost directly.
Mayor Nagin also imposes a 6 p.m. curfew. 10:11 a.m. The National Weather Service issues an apocalyptic advisory, the kind of warning it would seem positively suicidal to ignore. Devastating damage expected. Most of the area will be uninhabitable for weeks, perhaps longer. At least one half of well-constructed homes will have roof and wall failure. All windows will blow out. Airborne debris will be widespread. Persons, pets, and livestock exposed to the winds will face certain death if struck. By this point on Sunday morning, most people have either fled New Orleans or are in the process of doing so. But tens of thousands of people, many in the lowest lying and poorest parts of the city, are not leaving. They scramble to grab last-minute supplies.
We've got oil, we've got water, we've got food. Pray for us. Pray for all of New Orleans.
They'll tell you, well, I lived here through Betsy or Camille or one of the previous hurricanes. There have been all kinds of hurricanes that have come through. None of them could truly devastate the area.
With a police force of only 1,600, the mayor does not send his officers out to enforce the mandatory evacuation. It's not just a question of manpower. There is also a traditional bias against forcing people out of their own homes. Still, officers do use their powers of persuasion.
I went as far as telling people, I said, well, just do me a favor. Make life easy on us. Take a permanent marker, write your Social Security number along one arm and one leg. So when we find your body, we can check the Social Security records and find out who you are. That we don't have to try and fingerprint a decomposed body.
Mayor Nagin dispatches regional transit buses to pick up residents at 12 locations around the city and ferry them here to the Superdome.
Come with enough food, perishable items to last for 3 to 5 days. Come with blankets, with pillows, no weapons, no alcohol, no drugs. You know, this is like the governor said, yeah, you're going on a camping trip.
According to Amtrak, the city declines an offer to put hundreds of evacuees on the last passenger train leaving the city. The predictions about Katrina are so ominous that National Hurricane Center Director Max Mayfield not only briefs FEMA Director Michael Brown and Homeland Security Chief Michael Chertoff, but also President Bush. Louisiana State Representative Arthur Morell and his wife, Cynthia, a New Orleans City Councilwoman, argue about whether to evacuate.
He and my son did not want to leave. They were going to ride out the hurricane. And I said, oh, no.
Jazz trumpeter Kermit Ruffins has already boarded up his house. Now he and his fiancée consider whether to hit the road.
Normally I would stay home, you know, and board up my windows, light a few candles and relax for a day or two. But my fiancée said, Kermit, we better get out of here.
Elsewhere, people stand on street corners, holding a few spare possessions, bags of clothes or pillows. It's 91 degrees and humid as they wait for buses to take them to the Superdome. The process takes hours. When they arrive, they find a shelter with security, medical facilities, food, and water. Between them, FEMA and the Louisiana National Guard have trucked in tens of thousands of liters of water and MREs, or meals ready to eat, the standard military ration. By nightfall, nearly 10,000 people take shelter here.
I think the people in here are pretty happy to be inside.
Indeed, I'm very grateful for this Superdome, because without it, I don't know where we would have went.
By now, FEMA has mapped out 11 storage sites in and around the hurricane zone. They have stockpiled supplies, more than 2.5 million liters of water, more than 1.3 million MREs, and 17 million pounds of ice. 6 p.m., curfew time in New Orleans. The French Quarter is empty. It's warm, quiet, and calm. The news reports tonight all say the same thing. Katrina is barreling across the Gulf of Mexico at Cat 5 strength, the highest ranking. In the world of weather, this is the weapon of mass destruction.
This is pretty much the hurricane that we always talk about.
If it should stay on that current trajectory, just east of downtown New Orleans, that's bad. They avoid the direct hit from the south, but look, on the east side, that's the worst flooding scenario.
Next is FEMA.
9:30 p.m. Louisiana and FEMA officials hold one more conference call before Katrina strikes. The tone of the call is professional, matter of fact. But it seems the state and FEMA are still pinning down some basic details.
FEMA ESS 6 here. We would like to get some additional physical addresses for the general population shelters across Louisiana. I did send an email down to Kitty.
The National Weather Service gives a dire flooding report.
Yeah, you're pretty much going to have storm surge values around 18 to 19 feet outside your levee system. So that's going to cause you overtopping, probably both your federal levees and your parish levees. That's going to be an issue. There'll be major overtopping in your area.
Monday, August 29th, 2 a.m. Central Time. Katrina starts to lose energy as she nears land and hits shallow water. She weakens to a Category 4 or possibly a 3. Her leading edge is now lashing at towns along the coast of Louisiana and Mississippi. Her winds roar through dark neighborhoods. At least 1 million people have moved out of harm's way. But along the Gulf Coast, many people are riding out the storm in century-old homes, scattered shelters, and the Superdome. This is where they will stay. Katrina is here. Time has run out. Monday, August 29th, 2005. The nightmare is real. The brutal assault of Katrina begins. 4 a.m. Central Time. Katrina's monstrous winds push a storm surge of 14 to 17 feet toward the Louisiana coast. 5:02 a.m. Parts of New Orleans lose electricity. The Superdome goes dark. The structure has backup generators, but they run only reduced lighting. About 10,000 people here inside the dome listen as the air conditioning system shudders to a halt. Most of the evacuees remain calm.
Everybody nice. They fed us, and we just waiting till we ride the storm out.
6:10 a.m. Katrina storms ashore in Plaquemines Parish, Louisiana, 60 miles southeast of New Orleans. Our account of how the hurricane now decimates the city is based on the first comprehensive analysis of the events by the Louisiana State University Hurricane Center. First, the gargantuan storm surge pushes up the Mississippi River. It also races here into the Mississippi River Gulf outlet, and here through Lake Borgne, converging in this area known as the funnel. In New Orleans, the winds are furious. A few hundred feet from the Superdome, two brothers, both police SWAT team members, Dwayne and Daryl Sherman, have spent the night sleeping in their trucks.
We just left the doors open. We're sleeping on my brother on the back seat, his truck, me on the back seat of mine. And when we heard the wind picking up, and it actually sounded like somebody beating on the steel doors.
Doug Kiesling, a professional storm chaser, sets up his camera and starts recording.
I just had like Cat 3 or Cat 4 winds going through these buildings here, just ripping off stuff.
Evacuees in the Superdome hear a heart-rending noise.
It looks like one section of the Superdome roof may soon peel away from the actual stadium.
We're going to go now to Governor Blanco.
Reports that we have gotten from people in the dome tell us that there has been a portion of the roof that is leaking.
Water pours into the stadium. Katrina's winds tear at the roof as she rips away 15-foot-long sections. On the streets, a man struggles to stand in the blinding rains and relentless winds. 7 a.m. With the eye of the hurricane still south of the city, the storm surge tops the levees in the funnel. St. Bernard Parish begins to flood on both sides of the Intracoastal Waterway. So does the lower 9th Ward in New Orleans. Here, all along the Industrial Canal, Katrina's floodwaters now overtop the levees. Water starts cascading into the city, flowing from the canal both east and west. 7:30 a.m.
We'll now go to our parish reports. Please give us your status.
It's the first chance for local, state, and FEMA officials to report to each other on Katrina's assault.
Power down in the city. 911 down. The phone systems are all down, so we're talking on cell. We're extensive flooding in the east. Okay in the Superdome. Can everyone verify the water in the 9th Ward, Industrial Canal?
We've got major tidal surge coming up that intercoastal waterway in the East New Orleans. And we also getting some pushback coming up the canal.
Inside the Superdome, terrified evacuees are still watching as Katrina continues to tear away at the roof.
Right over the 50-yard line, a big chunk of the roof tore off.
Came down suddenly, all of a sudden, it just scared everybody, scared me. I didn't know it was going to scare them. Suddenly, bam, unexpectedly. Again, look at it, again.
At that point, nobody knew if the building was going to hold.
7:45 a.m. By now, in the lower 9th Ward, the storm surge has begun to erode the earthen levees. Along the eastern side of the Industrial Canal, the levees now suffer an explosive break. The lower 9th Ward and New Orleans East flood rapidly. The flood waters reach to 12 feet above sea level, completely submerging many homes. The flooding in East New Orleans accelerates as the storm surge begins to overtop the levees on Lake Pontchartrain. The city is going under. At this moment, storm chaser Doug Kiesling is driving through downtown New Orleans. He meets a man who knows more about the flood consuming the city than the reporters on the scene.
How you doing, man? I had to leave out of my house, man. I don't know whether that water's coming over that levee or what.
The last I heard, it's not.
So you haven't heard about that water coming over that levee from the lake?
No, check it out.
Because the water started rising so high in my two-story apartment, I had to get out.
Back on the conference call in Baton Rouge, the emergency director for St. Bernard Parish asks the state official, Jeff Smith, for emergency supplies.
I also need that water and MREs as soon as possible. We've got those requests as well, and as soon as we can work them, we'll be getting them to you.
10 a.m. Katrina now whirls north and slightly east and delivers a direct strike near the Louisiana-Mississippi border. She decimates towns including Slidell, Louisiana, as well as Waveland, Bay St. Louis, Pass Christian, Gulfport, and Biloxi, Mississippi.
We're in Gulfport, right on the coast.
Other storm chasers here describe the scene.
We got a big storm surge coming in now. These roads are going to be completely, we're not going to be able to drive in another hour.
Well, we had to make it back to the hotel. Let's take a look outside and see what we got here. Well, there's the Gulf of Mexico right there, coming into our parking lot. Man, and we're still about an hour and a half away from the worst winds. Water's coming in the room. Oh, man.
It comes in wherever he turns.
Oh, yeah.
Storm surge.
These men help an elderly woman escape the rapidly rising water.
Well, we're in the lobby here of our hotel. We're completely underwater in this first store here. There's chairs floating by.
The enormous surge lifts up this car and rams it into the lobby doors.
Jim, look at this over here.
It's time to head to higher ground.
We're currently on the second floor.
The surge chases people up the stairs.
I think the eye is very close.
This is the eye wall. We're in the eye wall. Oh my God. That's the storm surge coming in. Look at the storm surge coming in.
The mayor of Gulfport, Mississippi, Brent Warr, is at his mother's house. On his two-way radio, he monitors police dispatch.
And you can hear the anguish in their voice, and all I could do is sit there and listen to it, hour after hour. And then finally the lady said, they were swimming for it. And I don't know whether they... I don't know whether they survived or not,
Biloxi, Mississippi. Mayor A.J. Holloway is in City Hall with his family. He watches Katrina's merciless assault on his city.
And then we look down towards the beach, and all of a sudden we see these big waves coming. And they were just coming, and one right behind the other one. And then we started seeing debris washing up. We started seeing parts of buildings, and I could recognize the buildings. I knew where they were. I knew what they looked like. Then we see furniture floating all around. And
Oh, there goes the house! The house is floating away!
then we started seeing cars floating by. And of course, tin off the buildings and shingles, just sort of like the Wizard of Oz,
Heading further east, Katrina swallows Mobile, Alabama, submerging some parts of the city in as much as 10 feet of water. Back in New Orleans, Katrina is keeping her worst nightmare for last, as her winds push the storm surge against the levees on Lake Pontchartrain. And yet, at the very moment that New Orleans is drowning, journalists here are unaware of the catastrophe unfolding elsewhere in the city. Unwittingly, their live reports give the rest of the country a false sense of comfort.
They dodged the bullet, but they still got a sound bruising.
New Orleans, Monday, August 29th, 10 a.m. The Jackson Barracks, downriver from the French Quarter. Katrina's floodwaters surround 337 National Guard troops.
It was 14, 15 feet high in the armory in less than an hour. You could physically just sit there and watch it inch by inch going up the walls of the armory. You could hear pieces of the roof ripping off, glass breaking. We have huge brick walls around our armory, and you know, as the water came up with the hurricane, you could just see them toppling.
In homes across the city, the water forces people to move to higher floors. Angela Green and Chris Erskine are in their home in the mid-city neighborhood.
We were in a single-story duplex, you know. I mean, it came up to our steps probably within the first hour, and then probably came up further into the house within the next 2 hours. I had to axe through into our neighbors.
Drywall.
Right, and then get whatever perishables we could because ours were running out. And then we had to swim about 40 feet and get into another neighbor's house to get upstairs to the second floor.
If the waters rose high enough in your home, the potential is you drowned in your attic if you couldn't break your way out.
Baton Rouge. FEMA Director Michael Brown contacts Homeland Security Chief Michael Chertoff in Washington. Brown wants 1,000 temporary relief workers moved into the hurricane zone within 48 hours. FEMA has about 3,000 employees. Because it's not a first responder, it doesn't have ambulances, fire trucks, or helicopters of its own. The agency relies on state workers, the National Guard, private contractors, the U.S. military, and other federal agencies. Brown orders emergency workers to wait until federal, state, and local officials establish a unified command structure, standard FEMA protocol.
Sorting through that in the fog of war can be very difficult because it's the very time when it's the hardest to do that, to be able to say, hey, whoa, slow down here, let's work through this. You know, they don't want to hear that. You know, the state's left with the difficult task of trying to figure out, well, what is it that we can do to meet that need versus what we're going to go and ask the federal government to provide.
Katrina knocks out most communication systems. Phones are out. TV and radio stations cannot broadcast. Even satellite communication is unreliable.
That made the first responders victims.
A three-star Army General Russell Honore will receive orders later today to oversee the military response to Hurricane Katrina.
And when the first responders become victims, they have a challenge in communicating and coordinating.
The worst blow from Hurricane Katrina is about to hit New Orleans. Her eye is now northeast of the city. As her winds swirl counterclockwise, she pushes a colossal storm surge up and over the levees here on the south side of Lake Pontchartrain.
Storm turns this way. It pushed all that water back in this direction, forcing it into these canals, into the intercoastal waterway.
Floodwaters racing to both the 17th Street and London Avenue canals. The levee walls here along the London Avenue Canal start to creak and bend outward. Then near the Mirabeau Avenue Bridge, the walls on the east side of this canal collapse. Floodwaters cascade into the city. 10:30 a.m. The levee wall along the west side of the London Avenue Canal now fails. So does the eastern levee on the 17th Street Canal near the old Hammond Highway Bridge. That breach sends floodwaters into the western portion of Orleans Parish. The average home in New Orleans is drowning in 6 to 9 feet of standing water.
Everything was damaged. I didn't see one thing that was not damaged. One house, one business. I particularly noticed that almost every roof was damaged. And I knew at that point we had a big problem.
Rescuers are now heading out into the floodwaters. Among them, New Orleans police officers Dwayne and Daryl Sherman.
We started receiving reports. There was just hundreds and hundreds of people stranded in attics and on the roofs.
New Orleans Times-Picayune photographer Alex Brandon joins the Sherman brothers and documents the search and rescue mission.
We decided at that point to make our way down. We had to take a chainsaw and the entire SWAT team to clear a path because of all the oak trees that were down.
There's already people inside in their attics yelling for help.
At that point, you're saying to yourself, and you're looking at what you know when you used to patrol as the lower 9th Ward was now a lake. It just so happened it was full of houses. And you said, this is going to be bad. We pulled up to a roof to rescue a young man, and he waved us off and said, look, I'm fine, but there's some old people in that house right there. And as we pulled up, there was an elderly couple. I would guess they were probably in their 70s in a single-story dwelling.
Throughout the day, the Shermans, along with Brandon, go from house to house to rescue the young, the old, and the poor.
I'd take a picture and then I'd set the camera down and I'd help the person in the boat. I'd take a picture, I'd set the camera down and help the person in the boat. These poor people, their strength is gone.
Gratitude is immediate. At one point, Brandon photographs entertainer Fats Domino moments after his rescue from his house. General Honoré regards Katrina as a worthy adversary.
What this storm did was a classic military operation. The storm gathered strength, attacked the coast of Louisiana and Mississippi with overwhelming force. One of the things that a military attack you'd want to do is to cut the enemy's ability to communicate. It took out all cell phone and regular phone services. The other thing this storm did is it cut the road network.
It's totally flooded out down there.
As this storm moved north, it protected its left flank by leaving a flood.
Yeah, this whole place is going underwater.
Again, classic military attack. Take the enemy's eyes out. Take his ears out. Then fix him so he can't maneuver.
Katrina has declared war on the Gulf Coast. She is winning handily.
Downtown New Orleans is thrashed.
1 p.m. At this moment, NPR reaches one of its reporters, John Burnett, at his hotel room in New Orleans. Burnett and many other journalists are unaware of the levee breaks.
It was the best eventuality of the worst possible scenario. They dodged the bullet, but they still got a sound bruising.
The media were what people relied on back in Washington to get a picture of what was going on there. And when the report was that everything looked okay on Monday afternoon, that's the impression that was conveyed back in Washington.
To the east, once Katrina passes, the damage is shocking. Off the coast of Mobile, Alabama, Katrina has rattled this oil platform from its mooring. Biloxi, Mississippi, a 911 dispatcher is talking to a hurricane victim.
We're going to get you out of there. You need to calm down now.
Like they're drowned in my house. My house is totally gone.
The floating gambling barges in Biloxi and Gulfport have taken a direct hit. Katrina hurled the Grand Casino in Gulfport 150 yards onto US 90. The region's gambling industry is out of luck. So are many homeowners.
lost everything. I don't even know if my kids are alive, man.
I couldn't believe my eyes. Everything was gone. People were just coming out of their homes and the dazed look on their faces. Their neighbors, in many cases, were just gone.
Monday afternoon, nature's fury and the politics of disaster are on a collision course. Baton Rouge, Louisiana. FEMA Director Michael Brown reports back to both Homeland Security and the White House. The scope of the natural disaster is unprecedented. Relief efforts in New Orleans are uncoordinated. Brown has concluded that Louisiana is incapable of handling the crisis. As night falls, some survivors wade through the brackish water as corpses float by. This evening, an ABC News correspondent on the scene in New Orleans reports that the levees have only overtopped, not broken. It was simply the volume of rain that left many areas underwater, he says. This was not the apocalyptic hurricane that many had feared. Just how wrong such reports are will become abundantly clear over the next 24 hours. Tuesday, August 30th, 2005. As the morning sun illuminates the shattered Gulf Coast, early risers in other parts of the country are greeted with surprisingly good news. A New York Times headline is one of many reports expressing relief. Escaping feared knockout punch barely, it says, New Orleans is one lucky big mess. Here's the real scene Tuesday morning in New Orleans. Floodwaters cover 80% of the greater New Orleans area. In the city alone, Katrina has destroyed at least 200,000 homes. Survivors navigate through the city on top of a mattress, in a tub, or on a crude raft. Cars, houses, street signs are all submerged in a muddy brown layer of water, gas, sewage, and chemicals. Thousands of desperate residents are trapped in their homes, chased by the rising waters into attics, breaking through to their rooftops. They wait and pray for help. A depleted police force struggles to come to the city's aid. Police will later report that 249 officers deserted their posts during the hurricane.
You know, they left us at the most critical time in the city. It hurt us bad. It really did.
And yet, rescue missions are in full swing. Leading the charge, the U.S. Coast Guard, National Guard units, FEMA search and rescue teams, and the Louisiana Department of Wildlife and Fisheries. Even in the midst of a communications blackout, they pluck the stranded off rooftops and motor up to their flooded homes.